The first thing that happens, usually, is the love scene.
The lights dim, the camera rolls, and suddenly Diane Lane leans back in her chair with that devastating smile that's launched 1,000 fantasies. At 60 years old, she's about to confess something that will leave you absolutely breathless. The interviewer asks the question everyone's been dying to know, and Diane's response is pure fire. "You really want me to answer that?" she teases, her eyes flashing with dangerous mischief. At 60, I've learned that honesty can be a little dangerous, especially when it's about handsome men. What happens next will shock you because Diane Lane is about to reveal the 6 leading men who made her forget her lines, her composure, and maybe even a few of her morals. These weren't just professional relationships or casual attractions. These were moments of pure, intoxicating chemistry that burned so intensely they nearly derailed entire productions. Diane crosses one leg over the other, her voice dropping into that smoky, confessional rhythm that made her a legend. "There's a difference between fantasy and action," she admits with a knowing smile. "And trust me, the fantasy is the better part. You get to keep the mystery, you get to keep the thrill. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is stop right before you make the mistake you'll never forget." But here's her bombshell confession. "There were 6 men who made me forget my lines, my cool, and maybe a few of my morals. I never crossed the line, but I thought about it more than once." Get ready for revelations that will change everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most iconic leading lady. The first name on Diane's list will absolutely blow your mind. Richard Gere enters this story like he entered every scene, with that quiet confidence that fills a room before he even speaks a word. During the filming of Unfaithful, Diane thought working with Richard would be easy. She was completely wrong. The moment he looked at her during their first read-through, she lost her place on the page entirely. Not because he did anything obvious, but because he has that devastating stillness, that laser focus that makes you feel completely seen. Here's what's incredible about their connection. "You spend months pretending to be in love with someone like that," Diane confesses. "Long days, emotional scenes, barely any personal space, and suddenly the acting starts to feel dangerously natural. There was this electric dance happening between takes, glances that lingered too long, pauses that revealed everything, heartbeats you could hear in the silence. Everyone on set pretended not to notice, but the chemistry was so obvious it was practically combustible. By the time they filmed Nights in Rodanthe, Diane admits it was like picking up a conversation that had never really ended. They tease each other between takes, quote lines from Unfaithful, and somehow that teasing made every scene more intimate, more human, more real. "Richard has a kind of elegance that's dangerous," she reveals. "It sneaks up on you. You think you're fine, then he smiles and you forget what you were about to say." The second confession involves a man whose very presence could make standing still look heroic. Kevin Costner walked onto the set of Let Him Go with that legendary low drawl and that steady way of looking at you that pulls you in like a dangerous current. Diane describes Kevin as having quiet gravity that makes you feel completely safe, but there's always something simmering beneath the surface, a challenge, a spark that changes everything. What's fascinating about their dynamic is how Kevin could tease you without saying a single word. You'd be in character, thinking about your next line, and he'd give you that devastating half smile. Not a grin, just a hint of one, and suddenly you're not thinking about dialogue anymore. You're thinking, "Don't blush on camera." Kevin taught Diane that strength doesn't have to shout. Sometimes it just stands there, calm and unbothered, and lets you feel every beat of its power. But wait until you hear about the third man on her list, because this one involves raw, unpredictable energy that nearly set the entire production on fire. Josh Brolin was pure electricity from the moment he stepped onto the Jonah Hex set. Diane describes him as all instinct and grit, the kind of actor who makes scenes unpredictable in the most thrilling way possible. He's not the type to stick to the same rhythm twice. He'd look at you differently, throw a new tone into a line, and suddenly the entire scene would feel completely alive and dangerous. Here's what made Josh absolutely irresistible. He had this wild streak paired with surprising tenderness. He'd deliver a take that felt like thunder. Then between setups, he'd be cracking jokes and making sure you were okay. That combination of danger and kindness was pure magnetism. Diane admits there were moments when they'd both stop acting for half a heartbeat, caught in something real and electric. That's when you know you're in dangerous territory, she confesses, the space where trust and tension overlap completely. The fourth revelation takes us back to the 80s, when two young actors were trying to look like adults who knew what they were doing. Matt Dillon had that quiet cool that every director wanted, the ability to lean against a wall, say nothing, and somehow still own the entire frame. Diane was trying desperately not to look impressed and failing miserably at hiding her attraction. What made Matt dangerous was his ability to make silence feel like dialogue. You'd be waiting for your cue and realize he was already telling a whole story just by looking at you. Decades later, Diane can still picture that devastating half-smile that would make her forget her lines completely. He's grown into that same calm power he had back then, just steadier now, more refined. Some people lose their spark with age, but Matt just let his smolder mature into something even more irresistible. But the fifth confession might be the most explosive of all, because it involves Hollywood's most intense superstar at the beginning of his legendary career. Tom Cruise was pure, fearless momentum, even during The Outsider's days. He walked onto every set like a comet, radiating energy you could feel before you even saw him. What made Tom absolutely captivating was his combination of boyish charm and laser precision. He'd look you straight in the eyes when you were talking, and for a moment it felt like the rest of the world had gone completely quiet. Diane admits that Tom's focus was both disarming and intoxicating. When he connected with you in a scene, you didn't act anymore. You simply responded to his magnetic pull. Tom made every set feel electric, leaving everyone a little lighter, a little faster, and definitely more awake than they'd planned to be. That combination of intensity and optimism was pure Hollywood magic in its most dangerous form. The sixth and final confession involves a man whose European mystery nearly drove Diane to distraction. Christopher Lambert brought that calm surface with something powerful happening underneath that made every moment between takes feel charged with unspoken secrets. During night moves, they spent long hours together working through complicated dialogue, and Christopher's focus drew her in completely. When Christopher listened, he really listened, making even quiet moments feel like sharing secrets that didn't need words. That gentle accent and slightly mischievous energy kept everyone on their toes. Acting with him was like playing chess, and half the fun was trying to stay one move ahead of his quiet seduction. These six men didn't just share screens with Diane Lane. They created moments of chemistry so intense that the line between acting and reality became dangerously thin. At 60, Diane finally has the courage to admit that sometimes the most powerful attractions happen when you're pretending to be someone else, but the feelings become absolutely real. These confessions prove that Hollywood's greatest love stories often happen behind the cameras, in stolen glances and heartbeats between takes that stay with you forever.